The night was eerily silent, the kind of silence that weighs heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Ethan Carter stood at the edge of his hotel balcony, staring into the endless city lights below. He had spent years clawing his way to the top, breaking promises, stepping on friends, and betraying the very people who had once trusted him. Yet tonight, for the first time in years, a strange unease gripped him. Success had come at a cost, but did he truly believe he could escape the debts of his past? The air felt thick with an unseen presence, as if fate itself had finally come knocking. And Ethan knew, no one hides from fate forever. The Rise, a man who had it all. Ethan Carter wasn't always like this. There was a time when he had dreams fueled by passion, not greed. Growing up in a small town, he had always wanted to be more than just another ordinary man. He worked relentlessly, sacrificing sleep and relationships, convinced that success was the only measure of a man's worth. At 28, he became the youngest executive in one of the most powerful real estate firms in the city. Wealth, power, and influence followed. People admired him, envied him. He had the kind of life most would only dream of: luxury cars, designer suits, an apartment in the city's most elite neighborhood. But behind the polished image was a man who had made dangerous choices. Ethan's rise had not been clean. He had betrayed his best friend, Ryan, by stealing an investment deal they had planned together. He had manipulated clients, broken promises, and severed ties with those who had once stood by his side. He justified it all with one simple belief: in this world, only the ruthless survive. But what he failed to realize was that fate does not forget, and karma never loses an address. The signs, warnings ignored. The first sign came subtly, an email from an anonymous sender. Everything comes full circle. Are you ready? Ethan scoffed, dismissing as a prank. Who would dare threaten him? He was untouchable. The second sign was more unsettling. At a high-profile business gala, he noticed a familiar face in the crowd: Ryan. But it couldn't be. Ryan had disappeared years ago after Ethan's betrayal, his career and reputation shattered beyond repair. And yet, there he was, standing across the room, staring at him. But when Ethan blinked, Ryan was gone. The unease started creeping in. Shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. Strangers whispered his name just as he passed by. His phone rang at odd hours, only to be met with silence. And then the nightmares began. Every night, the same dream. He was running through an endless maze, the walls closing in on him. A voice echoed in the distance, one he knew all too well. You can't run forever, Ethan. The breaking point, the first strike of fate. One evening, as Ethan was reviewing company reports in his office, his assistant rushed in, pale and trembling. Sir, there's been a security breach. Ethan's stomach twisted. What kind of breach? The assistant hesitated before handing him a tablet. The screen displayed a live feed from the company's private servers. His personal files, confidential deals, and most importantly, the proof of his betrayals, were being broadcasted online for thousands to see. His hands went cold. This wasn't just sabotage. This was destruction. His phone rang. No caller ID. Slowly, he answered. Who is this? He demanded. A low chuckle came through. You know who I am. Ethan's heart pounded. The voice was unmistakable. Ryan. I told you, Ethan, Ryan continued. No one hides from fate. Before Ethan could respond, the call ended. And at that moment, he knew his past had come for him. Ethan's fingers tightened around his phone as Ryan's voice echoed in his mind. He hadn't heard from him in years, not since the day he had walked away, leaving Ryan to deal with the ruins of a business deal that should have made them both millionaires. Ethan had taken everything, and Ryan had vanished. Now, like a ghost from his past, Ryan had returned, not as a broken man, but as someone who held all the power. Ethan's heart pounded as he looked back at his computer screen. His entire empire was crumbling before his eyes. Confidential deals, emails, proof of fraudulent transactions, all leaked. He could already imagine the fallout. Clients would leave. Investors would pull out. The media would eat him alive. This wasn't just revenge. It was a carefully orchestrated downfall, and it had only just begun. The isolation, no one left to trust. Desperation clawed at Ethan's mind. He needed to act fast. He called his company's IT department, but they were already scrambling to contain the damage. His assistant refused to look him in the eye. His business partners, once eager to shake his hand, now ignored his calls. By the time he left the office that night, he knew he was alone. As he stepped into his penthouse, exhaustion weighed on him. The city skyline stretched out before him, but for the first time, it brought no comfort. He poured himself a drink, trying to steady his nerves, when his phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time, it was a video message. With a deep breath, he pressed play. The footage showed the lobby of his building. A man in a black coat walked in, his face hidden under a hood. He moved with purpose, heading toward the elevator, toward Ethan's floor. A shiver ran down his spine. He turned toward the door, half expecting it to burst open. Silence. But he couldn't shake the feeling. He was being watched. The confrontation. A ghost returns. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of a security alarm blaring. He grabbed his phone, his vision still blurry from lack of sleep. Multiple security notifications flashed across the screen. Someone had bypassed the front desk and was inside the building. He rushed to check the surveillance feed. At first, nothing seemed out of place. But then, in the corner of the screen, he saw it. A message, written on the mirror in his office. "I'm closer than you think." Panic set in. He had to get out. Grabbing his keys, he bolted for the door. But the moment he stepped into the hallway, he froze. There, at the end of the corridor, stood a figure, dressed in black, waiting. Ethan's breath hitched. "Ryan," he whispered. The man took a step forward, and the dim hallway lights illuminated his face. It was Ryan, but something was different. He wasn't the same man Ethan had abandoned years ago. His eyes were cold, empty, like someone who had nothing left to lose. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Ryan said, his voice calm. Ethan's pulse raced. "What do you want?" Ryan smirked. "I think you already know. The price of betrayal." Ethan took a step back. "Look, if this is about the past, I can fix this. I can pay you." Ryan cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Pay me? Ethan, do you really think this is about money?" His voice darkened. "You stole more than just a deal. You stole my future. You took everything from me. And now, I'm here to take something from you." Ethan's mind scrambled for a way out. He had security. He had resources. But as he looked into Ryan's eyes, he realized none of that mattered. This wasn't negotiation. It was a reckoning. Ryan pulled something from his pocket and tossed it to Ethan's feet. A flash drive. "Everything you've done," Ryan said. "All your secrets. Your lies. Your betrayals. I made sure the world knows who you really are." Ethan's hands trembled as he picked up the drive. "You think ruining me will fix anything?" Ryan's expression didn't change. "No, but it will make sure you finally understand. No one escapes fate. Ethan, not even you." The final blow. Ethan staggered back into his apartment, slamming the door shut. His mind raced. He needed a plan. He needed to salvage what was left. But it was too late. By the afternoon, his bank accounts were frozen. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, one he wasn't invited to. News outlets were running his story, exposing every shady deal he had ever made. And then the final blow came, an arrest warrant. The authorities arrived within hours, knocking on his door with charges that would ensure he lost everything. The empire he had built on lies had crumbled to dust. As he was led away in handcuffs, Ethan caught a glimpse of a figure in the crowd, Ryan, watching from a distance. For the first time, Ethan understood. Betrayal always has consequences. And no matter how far you run, no one hides from fate.